We would like to give a warm welcome to Lynn Givens. Many of you already know Lynn from previous OGOA webinars and her Connect to Comprehension course. Lynn is an expert in the field of literacy and served as past director of intervention at the Florida Center for Reading Research and professor of reading at Florida State University.
Thank you, Marisa. It's my pleasure to be here with all of you today. In this webinar, we're going to be looking at the elusive topic of comprehension and how we can help our struggling readers improve in this critical reading component. We as teachers and parents know that our students must comprehend what they read. They should be able to generate and answer questions, summarize what they have read, and reflect and respond to written text. Teaching all of these skills is a daunting endeavor. Until about 20 years ago, we were unsure about exactly how to proceed. The National Reading Panel report from 2001 changed all that. We now know that comprehension is only one of the 5 basic components of reading, and that mastery of all of these components is necessary for effective comprehension to be achieved. Younger students who have difficulty comprehending often need to become more fluent and automatic decoders so that they have sufficient cognitive energy to understand and think about what they are reading. These same issues hold true for older readers, but for them, being able to unlock the meanings of unknown words through the use of structural analysis and morphology is an additional issue. We also need to remember that comprehension is often measured by a student's written responses, so that written expression enters into this equation in a big way. So, for all readers, we must look at their strengths and weaknesses in foundational skills, as well as measuring comprehension. Here's an anecdote that clearly illustrates this point. I've recently begun to work with Crystal, a 27-year-old woman who dropped out of school in the 8th grade. Her current goal is to obtain her GED and eventually to attend a local community college. She's enrolled in a class for students who are planning to take the GED, and her instructors there reported that she was struggling with reading comprehension. When I administered several assessments to measure her word and passage reading, it was evident to me that Crystal struggled to decode basic words, even those with consonant blends. When I asked her about reading, she confided, "If I've seen a word before, I know what it is. If I haven't seen it before, I don't know what to do." Listening to her read a decodable passage confirmed her message, as did a spelling inventory to measure her encoding skills. But later, when I read a passage to Crystal, she was able to answer questions involving upper-level comprehension skills such as inferring, comparing and contrasting, and determining cause and effect. Since the testing at the GED Center involved answering multiple choice questions on a computer, it was easy to assume that this young woman needed help with comprehension, when in fact, her difficulties lay in foundational skills. Even though Crystal is an adult, her profile of many younger struggling readers. So, how do we begin to work on comprehension skills with a struggling reader? First of all, as I've alluded to just a minute ago, we need to employ a thorough diagnostic assessment to identify specific weaknesses in all reading components: phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, as well as an assessment of a student's oral language and written expression. A standardized assessment will not give us enough of this in-depth information, nor will a group-administered test. Once we've determined the specific foundational weaknesses, if they do exist, we can begin to use systematic, explicit instruction to remediate these weaknesses. If we compile a thorough profile of our struggling readers, we can then ensure that we are using appropriate materials and strategies to lead them to an improvement in comprehension. For readers who are still not fluent with grade level text, decodable books are ideal. As Sharon Vaughn, a leading reading researcher, stated, decodable text can, quote, reinforce and transfer the reading of words with particular patterns from isolated cards to connected text, end quote. If a struggling reader's lack of automaticity with high-frequency words is impeding his comprehension, frequent review and practice with these words can pay large dividends. If a student has learned phonetic rules and patterns but is still a word-by-word reader, practicing with fluency phrases is a critical instructional strategy. Without meaningful phrasal reading, comprehension is difficult at best. We'll look at a strategy to promote that kind of reading in a few minutes. Practicing is a key component to effective work with struggling readers. They should practice fluent reading by rereading familiar text. However, the first reading of a text should always be done with a teacher or a more advanced peer so that mistakes are not repeated over and over. Vocabulary is another area that we often neglect, and it is a critical area of instruction, review, and practice for struggling readers. These students have not read nearly as many books as their more fluent peers, and much of the vocabulary we learn is through reading. This fact was brought home again to me recently as I became aware that my adult student, Crystal, who is a bright young woman, did not know the meanings of many relatively simple words, such as grip and gasp. We will talk more about strategies for addressing this vocabulary gap in a few minutes, but it is important to understand the reason that it often exists, even with our brightest struggling readers. Sharon Vaughn also stresses the need for pre-reading instruction to activate background knowledge and to prepare students for reading. Struggling readers, who have often read few books on their own, especially need this type of instruction. The comprehension strategies that we include must be taught explicitly, at first, one at a time, through modeling, discussion, guided, and then independent practice. And they must begin with literal skills, such as recalling details and determining main ideas. Then progress to more inferential skills, such as comparing and contrasting. And finally, to evaluative skills, such as determining the effectiveness of an author's word choice. We cannot talk about any component of reading, including comprehension, without mentioning the importance of writing. This must accompany every aspect of instruction and practice. As students learn to read words with various phonetic elements, they should also be expected to write these words in isolation and in dictated sentences. Writing should also be included during comprehension instruction and practice. There is powerful research to back up this point. In 2010, the Carnegie Corporation shared the results of a meta-analysis in their Writing to Read report. One of the findings was that writing about what they have read helped students' comprehension more than any other practice, such as reading alone, or reading and discussing, or instruction without writing. The most effective ways to accomplish this writing, noted the report, are summarizing, answering questions, and making personal connections to what has been read. And we'll return to these elements in just a few minutes. And now, the big idea for this webinar. If we wait until students have mastered all of the foundational skills before we begin to provide instruction and practice and comprehension skills, including upper level skills, our students will continue to struggle for a very long time. But if we provide practice in upper level comprehension skills while we are working on foundational skills, Our students will only have to climb one mountain. Connect to Comprehension, the reading intervention program that we're going to look at in depth as the next part of this webinar, uses this big idea as its base. So how does Connect to Comprehension address the needs of struggling readers while providing this integrated instruction and practice? Going back to the need for a strong diagnostic assessment, let's take a look at the C2C single word assessment. This provides a list of 100 phonetically regular words divided into 6 levels, beginning with CVC words and ending with multisyllabic words that follow each of the syllabication rules. As a student reads these words, the assessor notes which words were read with automaticity, which required more time and effort to blend and read, and which were read incorrectly. Using an error analysis can help to determine specific needs for decoding if they exist. Once the level of automatic word reading has been determined, the student is then asked to read a decodable passage at that level. This assessment serves several important purposes. First, as a student is timed for 1 minute, a base fluency score is obtained. Second, the use of a running record helps to pinpoint issues with decoding in connected text and with fluency issues. Lastly, the student answers questions at the end of the reading, which determines his or her ability to recall facts, identify main idea, compare and contrast, use cause and effect, make inferences, identify the author's purpose, and use context clues to unlock unknown words. From the results of these 2 short assessments, the teacher can assemble a relevant student profile for learning. We'll talk about how each aspect of this profile can be addressed in C2C in a few minutes. As our second requirement for struggling readers, we listed appropriate materials and strategies. The High Noon Sound Out chapter books used throughout the C2C program are ideal. They are engaging, sound out chapter books that are completely decodable. And here's their unique feature. They also provide engaging texts that are used to teach and practice the upper level comprehension skills we have listed. In addition to those skills, students can also learn about figurative language, multiple meaning words, and other essential skills for reading with meaning. To increase automaticity for students who are still hindered by lack of this skill, the skill decks and high frequency decks are used, as well as phrase strips to help foster automaticity at the phrasal level. For so many of our students, this work on automatic reading at their instructional level pays big dividends in terms of comprehension. Our third requirement for teaching comprehension to struggling readers listed explicit, appropriate instruction. With 6 levels of the program, each student or group of students can work at an appropriate level on phonemic and structural analysis skills. Upper level comprehension skills are stressed throughout the program, so that even students who are reading books with CVC words are working on upper level comprehension skills. Remember, we only want our students to have to climb 1 mountain. We know that our struggling readers also need appropriate and engaging opportunities for practice. Many of the scripted daily practice activities in C2C employ a game-like format, and many are multisensory. Students love playing the games in the program, often not realizing that they are doing some heavy-duty skills practice. Finally, We've talked about the need to pair reading and writing activities on a consistent basis. This is accomplished in the C2C program through daily, guided, and independent writing extensions, which help to reinforce phonetic skills, learned vocabulary words, and learned comprehension skills. And we'll look at examples of these coming up in a few minutes. The component chart on this slide is helpful as we go through each of the components of the program in the next few slides. You also have a copy of this in your participants guide so that you can use it as a reference for the next group of slides. As you can see, all of the components of reading are addressed, as well as the critical skills involving written expression and oral language. So let's begin to talk about these components one by one and to look at them in terms of how they impact comprehension. Each leveled manual begins with a level introduction, which provides a list of words with the phonemic patterns included in the 6 readers at that level. These are the words to be included in the skill deck for that level, which is used to promote automaticity at the word level. Game activities, some of which incorporate encoding, are also provided in the introduction for additional scaffolding and support. For students who need phonemic awareness practice, especially in blending and segmenting the targeted sounds, those activities are also provided. It is important to note here that the introduction activities can be used to fill in gaps the students may have. We know that many of our struggling readers have a lot of these gaps. For example, if a student is reading at level C, which incorporates words with initial and final blends, but he is still struggling with the short U sound, introductory activities with that one sound can be pulled from the level A materials. These skills can be located for each level by using the skills chart found on the first page of each teacher's manual. Within each manual are 6 book introductions, which help readers predict, activate background knowledge, and generate questions before reading. Again, these are scripted, as are all of the sections of each manual. For each chapter of the High Noon Readers, before reading, during reading, and after reading activities are provided within the manuals. The after reading questions, one of the most important sections of the program, focus on building upper level comprehension skills with scaffolding provided as needed. We can see this as we look at the next slide. So here's an example of a page from level C after reading questions. Note that the answer to each question is provided, as well as the page number. If a student struggles to answer a question, it is recommended that once the answer has been determined, he or she finds the answer in the text itself and reads it for confirmation. This activity helps students to use textual evidence, a skill that is really stressed in today's current standards for reading. As with the other skills we are building here, we are using decodable text that students can access to build skills that can then be applied to grade level text. Now, as you locate the skill focus section on your components chart, you will note that it incorporates phonics and written expression. Fluency is also practiced as students read back the corrected versions of what they have written. In skill focus, students practice using the phonetic and structural analysis skills that they are learning at each level of the program. Here are some examples of the skill focus activities. The Watch Your Vowel activity is used in several levels of the program, beginning with CVC words with short vowels in level A. In this brief snapshot from level B, Students are using what they have learned about long vowel teams to fill in the blanks as the teacher reads the list of words. Once students have correctly filled in all of the words, they read back their lists. I was recently reminded of how powerful this practice activity is as I worked with my adult student. As she was filling in words with the various vowel teams, she became more and more excited at her progress as she realized that she was actually spelling these words. Here are some examples of skill-focused activities from other program levels. Using letter tiles for these activities is one of the ways to add multisensory instruction to this practice. And note that as soon as students complete each set of words, and they're corrected, they will always read them back to you. Here are some examples of skill-focused activity for levels E and F. In levels E and F, structural analysis is the main component of the skill-focused activities, as students learn to build words with prefixes and suffixes. Level F also focuses on syllabication rules. Teachers often comment that as they work with their students at this level, their own understanding of these rules greatly increases. This level is so helpful for students even those who appear to have few decoding issues, as it sets the stage for allowing them to decode larger words as they progress through upper elementary and middle school grades. So, we've helped students with decoding and automaticity issues with the skill-focused instruction and practice. We've also helped them increase fluency at the word level, essential for comprehension of text. The next C2C component we'll discuss is making connections. In this part of each lesson, students work on fluency at the phrasal and sentence level using fluency strips. They also receive instruction and practice in the language of text and in upper-level comprehension skills. These activities have been carefully constructed so that students are only using the words they have learned to read. We are building skills brick by brick with no holes. That is what our struggling readers need in order to succeed. Fluency strips are included in the Making Connections section at all levels. These strips help students learn to read in meaningful phrasal units rather than word by word or in word groups that have little meaning. Once students can read each phrase strip fluently, they answer questions using the strips. This activity reinforces the idea that these groups of words have specific meaning. Once again, here's a brief anecdote. My adult student began our session by reading 3 words at a time, and it didn't seem to matter whether or not this grouping was meaningful. It was just what she did. I think perhaps that she needed to take a cognitive break after decoding 3 words before she could continue. Now that we have used these phrase strips for a few sessions, she is much more conscious of reading in groups of words that help rather than hinder her comprehension. Many teachers have told me that this use of phrase strips makes a real difference with their students. Making connections also incorporates structured activities that are the underpinnings of comprehension, such as understanding multiple meaning words. This understanding is needed for flexible thinking, which is critical to comprehension. If, for example, a student knows only one meaning for the word spot, like a spot on a shirt, he will be stumped by a sentence such as, "We could not spot the missing child." In this C2C section, students and their teachers construct graphic organizers to illustrate these types of words as they appear in the high noon readers. Writing, as we have discussed, is critical for improving all aspects of reading, including comprehension. In the guided practice activities, students work with a teacher to write dictated sentences with the patterns they have learned. They also write summaries, use graphic organizers, and write personal reactions to the text. In level F, for example, students are writing and then reading back sentences that contain various syllable patterns. And note at the bottom of the slide, it's really important that these are corrected with the teacher and that students read back their corrected sentences. At the end of each C2C lesson is an independent writing extension. This includes answering written questions, summarizing, and creating sentences with learned vocabulary or skill deck words. Students complete these sentences in their journal, providing a day-by-day formative assessment of their progress. Here's another example of an independent writing activity, the completion of a cause and effect chart. This activity, like all others, is practiced independently, only after instruction and guided practice in the skill or strategy have been provided. This next slide illustrates an important scaffolding technique that is used throughout the C2C program. Each written question in all levels is paired with a sentence frame so that students who need support in answering questions in complete sentences can fill in the missing words. This is especially important for students with language issues and for our English language learners. These frames should be discontinued as soon as students are able to perform the task without the scaffold, as scaffolding should always be just a temporary support. We've discussed the importance of vocabulary for comprehension, and we've talked about how this is especially important for struggling readers. Another one of the wonderful features of the High Noon readers is that there are many Tier 2 words incorporated in the story, words that are useful and those that appear often in other text. The C2C manuals list these words for each chapter and include a student-friendly definition, which students learn and practice using their vocabulary deck. But the vocabulary practice here, which is often in game format, goes far beyond definitions, helping students learn how to use these words in different contexts and developing deeper meanings. Here's an example from level E of a vocabulary activity. The teacher asks the questions, the students think about the meaning of the words that they have learned and then respond. This is focused on helping students achieve a deeper understanding of the words in their vocabulary deck. And here, from level F, is one of students' favorite games, Show Me, where they have a chance to act out selected vocabulary words and ask their peers or their teacher to guess. This slide is a summation of the vocabulary skills and strategies used throughout C2C. We've talked about most of them, but we've not talked yet about the use of context clues. While many of the Tier 2 useful words are taught directly within the program, some of them are taught through the use of context clues. We know that this strategy is important, as all words cannot be taught. So students need to learn to use context clues to unlock the meanings of words that they do not know. For the final part of our discussion, we're going to focus strictly on comprehension. I started this webinar by describing this component as elusive, which is the way we have thought about comprehension for a long time. However, we now know that if we first teach our students several critical strategies and then help them to become flexible in the use of these strategies, we will greatly enhance their ability to derive meaning from what they have read. I'd like to highlight a few of these strategies and discuss the ways in which they are taught and practiced in C2C. However, all of these strategies are incorporated into the program. Let's talk about summarizing. Summarizing requires students to determine what is important when they are reading and then to put it into their own words. Summarizing helps a student identify and thus more easily remember the big ideas in a text. However, struggling readers, when asked to summarize, may say or write down everything, or they may say or write down very little, or they may try to say or write parts of the text word for word rather than in their own words. In C2C, students learn to create oral summaries first. The sequencing strips that are included in the program identify the main ideas in the text so that students can begin to distinguish these bigger ideas from the smaller, less important details. And as they complete each high noon reader, students use beginning, middle, and ending organizers to help them in their summaries, and they learn to use transition words to help their written sentences flow more smoothly. Generating questions is another important comprehension strategy. When students are able to ask themselves questions as they read, they can stay more focused on the text. By generating questions, students become aware of whether or not they can answer those questions as they read. So it's a way of self-monitoring. As they become more adept at this strategy, students can learn to ask themselves questions that combine information from different segments of the text and to ask questions that focus on main ideas. In the C2C program, teachers begin by asking students to generate questions about the text that begin with who, what, when, and where, and gradually add how and why. The teacher keeps a list of these questions on a chart for students to see as they continue reading the text so that they can answer them and then add new ones to their list. Now we're going to talk about visualizing and verbalizing, another critical strategy. For many readers, creating mental images as they read is automatic. Think about this. You probably do this while you read. Many readers visualize strategically when they need to understand a particular section of text. However, many struggling readers do not develop this strategy at all on their own. In C2C, as illustrated in this slide, students are frequently asked to visualize a description or event, and then asked either to draw or to verbalize what they are seeing in their movie. Through this consistent practice, struggling readers can become more comfortable with applying this powerful strategy independently as they read. Many of the high noon readers used in the C2C program are narrative text, but we know now that students must also practice reading informational text, since this genre requires different strategies for comprehension. Students must learn to use text features and specific graphic tools, which may be different from narrative tools, to help them organize and understand what they are reading. Research has shown that paired informational text, which are factual articles that can be read after the narrative text, but on the same subject. Well, research has found that this type of text is helpful for struggling readers to help them make a jump between these two genres. In C2C, decodable informational text is included for this purpose. For example, after reading a story about a family escaping from a fire, students read a factual article on how to stay safe in a fire. In closing, here are a few statements to sum up what we have been discussing. Most of our struggling readers need additional practice in automatic decoding at either the word, phrase, or sentence level. Decodable text is needed to reinforce the learned decoding skills without additional confusion. Fluency is a critical component to increase comprehension, and this skill involves much more than just reading fast. Vocabulary and upper comprehension skills can be taught along with more foundational skills if an appropriate reading program is used. Now let's look at the Orton-Gillingham Online Academy's Connect to Comprehension course. This course provides the information and support needed to effectively implement this program. The course is arranged in 10 sections, several of which look intensively at the components of reading and provide specific strategies for helping struggling readers at each component. In addition, participants in the course are provided with a step-by-step approach for implementing the C2C program, including how to use the assessments to identify a student's learning profile, how to develop and use the critical practice decks, and how to plan and successfully implement the C2C lessons. When participants enroll in the course, they receive a complete C2C kit and a set of 36 High Noon Sound Out chapter books, together a value of over $550. The information in this course, as is true for all of the Academy's courses, can be viewed at any time, so participants can continue to learn and refine their skills. Thank you so much for your time and attention to this information. I hope that it will prove valuable as you continue to provide instruction to your struggling readers. If you have any questions or simply want to continue this discussion with me, please feel free to contact me either by phone or email. Again, thank you so much.